I used to think secrets were safe as long as you never said them out loud. That was before my little sister got the dollhouse. It arrived on a rainy afternoon, the kind where the sky stays gray even after the storm passes. My mother said it was a gift from one of her friends, though she couldn't quite remember which one. The box had no label, no receipt, nothing except our address written in shaky handwriting. I remember thinking that was strange, but not strange enough to matter. My sister, Aina, didn't care. She was 6, and to her, the dollhouse was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. It was larger than most toy houses, almost too big to carry easily. The wood was dark, polished to a dull shine, with tiny carved windows and delicate railings. Every room inside was fully furnished, miniature chairs, beds, mirrors, even tiny paintings on the walls. It didn't look like a toy. It looked real, like someone had shrunk an actual house. Aina fell in love with it instantly. She spent hours sitting cross-legged on the floor, rearranging the furniture, talking softly to the dolls that came with it. There were 5 of them, a mother, a father, and 3 children. Their faces were oddly detailed, their glassy eyes reflecting light in a way that made them seem almost alive. At first, everything felt normal. Then the whispering started. It was subtle. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was just Aina talking to herself. I was in my room, trying to study, when I heard her voice from down the hall. I didn't tell anyone, she said. There was a pause. Then she giggled. I promise. I rolled my eyes. Kids say weird things all the time. I didn't think much of it until later that night, when I heard it again. This time, it wasn't just her voice. There was another one, soft, faint, almost like it was coming from inside a box. I froze, listening carefully. Aina was whispering again. Okay, I'll tell you another one. Another pause. Then the second voice came again. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew I wasn't imagining it. I stepped out of my room and walked quietly down the hallway. The house was dark except for the faint light coming from Aina's room. Her door was slightly open. I pushed it gently. She was sitting in front of the dollhouse, her back to me. The room was lit only by a small lamp beside her bed, casting long shadows across the floor. Aina, I said softly. She didn't turn around. Instead, she whispered, "Shush. She's talking." A chill ran down my spine. Who's talking? I asked. Aina slowly turned her head to look at me. Her expression was calm, almost serious. The doll, she said. She tells me things. I forced a laugh. Dolls don't talk. They do, Aina replied. You just have to listen. I stepped closer, kneeling beside her. The dollhouse looked the same as before, quiet and still. Which doll? I asked. Aina pointed to one of them, the smallest one, standing in the corner of the living room. It wore a tiny blue dress, its painted smile fixed and lifeless. That one, she said. She knows everything. I reached out and picked it up. It felt cold in my hand. See, I said. Nothing. Aina frowned. She doesn't like you. I laughed again, but it sounded forced. Okay, I'm going back to bed. As I stood up, Aina grabbed my wrist. She said you're lying, she whispered. My stomach tightened. About what? Aina tilted her head slightly, as if listening. Then she smiled. She said you didn't lose the money, she said. You took it. My heart stopped. I stared at her, my mind racing. What are you talking about? I said quickly. Aina just shrugged. That's what she said. I let go of her hand and stepped back. That's not funny, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Aina didn't respond. She had already turned back to the dollhouse, whispering again. I left the room, closing the door behind me. But I didn't sleep that night. Because what she said, it was true. A week ago, my mother had lost some cash she kept hidden in a drawer. Everyone assumed it had been misplaced. But it wasn't. I had taken it. No one knew. No one could know. Except, somehow, that doll did. The next few days, I avoided Aina's room. I told myself it was just a coincidence. Kids overhear things. Maybe she had seen me take the money without me noticing. Maybe she was just guessing. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. Because Aina didn't just repeat the secret. She said the doll told her. And the way she said it, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt real. I tried to ignore it. Until the night everything changed. I was alone in the living room, scrolling through my phone, when I heard a voice behind me. You shouldn't have done that. I froze. The voice was soft, almost childlike. Slowly, I turned around. No one was there. My heart started pounding. Aina, I called out. No answer. Then I heard it again. You took it. The voice was clearer this time. And it wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from the table. From the dollhouse. I stared at it, my breath shallow. The tiny blue-dressed doll was standing in the same spot as before. But something was different. Its head was turned slightly, facing me. I felt a cold wave of fear wash over me. That's not possible, I whispered. The doll didn't move, but I heard the voice again. You lie, it said. I stepped back, shaking my head. No, I said. No, this isn't real. You hide things, the voice continued. So many things. My chest tightened. How do you know? I whispered. There was a pause. Then the voice changed. It became older, darker. We hear everything. I felt my knees weaken. I repeated. The lights flickered. For a split second, I thought I saw something inside the dollhouse. A shadow. Moving. Then everything went still again. I didn't wait. I ran upstairs, my heart racing, my mind screaming that none of this made sense. But the worst part wasn't the voice. It was the feeling. The feeling that I was being watched. Not just by the doll, but by something inside it. Something that knew me. Something that knew everything. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I went into Anna's room while she was asleep. The dollhouse sat quietly in the corner, innocent and still. I approached it slowly. I know what you are, I whispered. No response. I reached out and grabbed the blue-dressed doll. It was cold. Too cold. I'm throwing you away, I said. As soon as I said it, the air in the room changed. The temperature dropped. And then, don't. The voice was right next to my ear. I spun around, but no one was there. My hands started shaking. You can't get rid of me, the voice said softly. I looked back at the doll in my hand. Its smile seemed wider now. You belong here, it whispered. Something inside me snapped. I threw the doll across the room. It hit the wall and fell to the floor. For a moment, everything was silent. Then Anna sat up in bed. Her eyes were open, but they didn't look like hers. You made her angry, she said. Her voice wasn't her voice. It was the same one. Cold, ancient. I backed away slowly. Anna, I said. She tilted her head. She was alone for a long time, she said. Now she has a home. My throat went dry. What are you talking about? I whispered. Anna smiled. She needed a way to speak, she said. Now she has many. The lights flickered again, and this time, I saw it clearly. Inside the dollhouse, every single doll had turned toward me. I couldn't move. Every doll inside the house was facing me. Not just turned slightly, not positioned like a child might arrange them, but perfectly aligned, as if they had all decided at the exact same moment to look directly at me. My chest tightened. That's not funny, I whispered, though my voice barely came out. Anna didn't blink. She says you're scared now, she said softly. I'm not scared, I lied. Anna's lips curled into a slow smile. She doesn't like liars. The room felt colder with every second. I could see my breath, faint and white in the dim light. I forced myself to look away from the dollhouse and toward my sister. Anna, go back to sleep, I said, trying to sound calm. You're just dreaming. She's not a dream, Anna replied. Then, very slowly, she pointed toward the doll I had thrown. I followed her finger. The blue-dressed doll was no longer where it had fallen. It was standing right in front of the dollhouse. My stomach dropped. I didn't touch it, I said quickly. I know, Anna whispered. She did. Something cracked inside me then, not a sound, but a feeling, like the last piece of logic breaking apart. I stepped forward without thinking, my eyes locked on the doll. You're not real, I muttered. You're just a toy. As I got closer, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The doll's face wasn't perfectly painted. There were tiny lines near its eyes. Imperfections, almost like wrinkles. And its eyes, they weren't glassy anymore. They looked wet, alive. I stumbled back. No, I said under my breath. Behind me, Anna giggled. She likes you, she said. Why? I snapped, my fear turning into anger. Why me? Anna didn't answer right away. Instead, she tilted her head again, listening. Then she said, because you have the most secrets. My heart started pounding harder. That's not true, I said. Anna's smile widened. She says you hide things even from yourself. A sharp ringing filled my ears. Stop it, I said. Just stop talking. But Anna kept going. She says you remember the boy. Everything inside me froze. What boy? I asked, though I already knew. Anna's voice dropped lower. The one from the water. My hands started shaking. No, I whispered. You don't know anything about that. I didn't, Aina said. But she does. The room seemed to close in around me. I couldn't breathe properly. That memory, something I had buried so deeply I had almost convinced myself it never happened, rose to the surface. It had been years ago. We were kids. There was a lake near our old house. And there was a boy. He couldn't swim very well. I remembered the way he struggled, the way he called out for help. And I remembered standing there, watching. I didn't push him. I didn't touch him. But I didn't help either. I just stood there. And eventually, he stopped moving. No one ever knew I had been there. No one ever asked. It was an accident. That's what everyone believed. That's what I let them believe. That wasn't my fault, I said quickly, my voice trembling. I didn't do anything. Aina's expression didn't change. She says that's the problem, she whispered. Tears burned in my eyes. I was scared, I said. I was just a kid. She says you're still scared. I said stop. I shouted. The lights flickered violently. For a moment, the entire room went dark. And in that darkness, I heard something new. Water. Dripping. Slow. Steady. My breath caught in my throat. When the lights came back on, the dollhouse had changed. The tiny living room floor looked wet. No, that wasn't possible. But I could see it. A faint shimmer, as if water was pooling inside. And then, the blue-dressed doll moved. This time, I saw it. It didn't just appear in a new position. It moved. Its head turned first. Then its arm twitched. Then its entire body shifted forward, one stiff, unnatural step at a time. I couldn't scream. I couldn't even move. She wants to show you, Aina said quietly. The doll stopped at the edge of the dollhouse. Then, slowly, it raised its arm, pointing, not at me, but at the space beside me. My blood ran cold. I turned my head, and saw him, standing in the corner of the room, dripping wet. His clothes clung to his body, dark with water. His face was pale, his eyes, empty, but they were looking at me. You remember now, Aina said. I staggered back, hitting the wall. This isn't real, I whispered. This isn't real. The boy took a step forward. Water pooled beneath his feet. I tried to forget, I said, shaking my head. I didn't mean for it to happen. He didn't speak. He just kept walking. You didn't help, Aina said. I was scared. I shouted. I didn't know what to do. The boy stopped a few feet away from me. Close enough that I could see the way his lips were slightly parted, as if frozen in his last breath. You watched, Aina continued. Stop it, I screamed. The doll's voice returned, louder now, overlapping with Aina's. You watched. You waited. You let him sink. I covered my ears. Stop. But the voices didn't stop. They multiplied. Every doll in the house began to whisper. Soft at first. Then louder. Then all at once. A chorus of voices, repeating the same words. You watched. You watched. You watched. I dropped to my knees, my head spinning. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry, okay. I didn't mean to. The whispering stopped instantly. Silence filled the room. I slowly lifted my head. The boy was gone. The water was gone. The dollhouse looked normal again. Aina lay back down in bed, her eyes closing as if nothing had happened. For a moment, I thought it was over. That maybe, somehow, it had all been in my head. Then I heard the voice again. Right behind me. Soft. Satisfied. She likes the truth. I turned slowly. The blue-dressed doll was on the floor behind me. Much closer than before. Its head tilted upward, looking straight at me. She's not done with you, it whispered. A cold dread settled deep in my chest. What do you want? I asked hoarsely. The doll didn't move, but the voice came again. More. My stomach twisted. More what? There was a pause. Then, confessions. The word echoed in my mind. And suddenly, I understood. It didn't just know my secrets. It fed on them. Every hidden truth. Every buried memory. Every lie. It wanted them all. And it wasn't going to stop. Not until it had everything. I tried to leave the room. But as soon as I reached the door, it slammed shut on its own. I grabbed the handle, pulling hard. It wouldn't budge. Behind me, the whispering started again. Different voices this time. New ones. Ones I didn't recognize. They're coming, Aina murmured from her bed, half asleep. Who? I asked, panic rising in my chest. She smiled faintly. The others. A cold wave of fear washed over me. What others? But I already knew the answer. The dollhouse wasn't just a toy. It was a place. A container. A doorway. And whatever was inside it, wasn't alone. The walls of the dollhouse creaked softly. And then, one by one, The other dolls began to move. Tell me when you're ready, and I'll continue the next part. This gets much darker and reveals what's really inside the dollhouse. The first doll to move was the smallest boy. At least, that's what it looked like at first. It stood near the tiny staircase inside the dollhouse, stiff and lifeless just moments ago. Now its head jerked sharply to the side, as if something inside it had suddenly woken up. Then came the sound. A faint crack, like old wood bending. Its arm lifted. Too fast, too unnatural, and pointed toward me. My breath hitched. No, I whispered, backing into the door. No, 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 another crack echoed. The second doll moved. Then the third. One by one, every figure inside the house came alive, not smoothly, not like something living, but in jagged, broken motions. Their limbs twitched, their heads snapped into place, their tiny bodies shifting as if controlled by something that didn't quite understand how joints were supposed to work. And then they all stopped. Completely still. All of them facing me. The silence was unbearable. What do you want? I asked again, my voice barely holding together. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the blue-dressed doll stepped forward. This time, it didn't stop at the edge of the dollhouse. It fell, but it didn't hit the ground like a toy should. It landed on its feet. Perfectly balanced. My vision blurred. That's not possible, I whispered. It tilted its head, as if studying me. You still doubt, the voice said. It wasn't just coming from the doll anymore. It was everywhere. Inside the walls. Inside my head. I said I'm sorry, I muttered, my hands shaking. What else do you want from me? The doll took a step closer. Then another. Each step made a soft clicking sound, like something hollow tapping against the floor. Sorry is small, it said. A sharp chill ran through me. What does that even mean? The doll stopped just a few feet away. Its eyes locked onto mine. We are empty, it whispered. We were silent, forgotten, buried. My throat tightened. And now? I asked. Its smile stretched wider. Now we remember. The air grew heavier. I felt pressure building around me, like the room itself was closing in. Behind the doll, something moved. I glanced toward the dollhouse, and froze. The inside was darker now. Not shadowed by light, actually darker. Like the space inside it had deepened, expanded beyond what should have been possible. And inside that darkness, shapes. More than 5. More than the dolls that came with it. There were others. Standing. Watching. My chest tightened. How many of you are there? I whispered. The doll didn't answer directly. Instead, it said, how many secrets exist? My heart skipped. That doesn't make sense. It does, the voice replied softly. Every secret has a place. Every silence has a home. I shook my head. No, no, this isn't real. This is just some kind of hallucination. Then wake up, it said. I stopped. What? Wake up, the voice repeated. I tried. I squeezed my eyes shut, digging my nails into my palms. Wake up, I whispered to myself. But when I opened my eyes, nothing had changed. The doll was still there. The darkness inside the dollhouse still moved. And the whispering was getting louder. They're coming out, Aina murmured from her bed. I turned to her. What do you mean? She sat up slowly, her eyes half open. They don't want to stay inside anymore. A sharp panic shot through me. You need to stop this, I said. Tell them to stop. Aina shook her head. I don't control them, she said. She does. She looked at the blue-dressed doll. She opened the door. A low creaking sound filled the room. I turned back toward the dollhouse. The front door, the tiny, detailed wooden door, was opening. Slowly, deliberately. The darkness inside seemed to breathe outward, spilling into the room like smoke. And then, a hand emerged. Not plastic, not painted, real, pale, too thin. It gripped the edge of the doorway and pulled itself forward. I stumbled back, my legs giving out as I hit the floor. No, I whispered. No, 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 the hand was followed by an arm. Then a head, but it wasn't fully formed. Its features shifted, unstable, like something trying to decide what it should look like. Faces flickered across it, different ages, different expressions, fear, anger, sorrow, all blending together. What is that? I choked out. The blue-dressed doll answered. Someone who was never heard. The thing dragged itself further out of the dollhouse, its body stretching unnaturally, too large for the space it was emerging from. And then another hand appeared behind it. Then another. More shapes pressed against the doorway, trying to force their way out. They're all secrets, the voice whispered. Forgotten, hidden, denied. My entire body trembled. You're not real, I said again, but the words felt hollow now. They are as real as what you hide, it replied. The first figure collapsed onto the floor, its body twisting as it tried to stand. It turned toward me, and for a brief, horrifying second, I recognized one of the faces. Not clearly, but enough. It was someone I had seen before. Someone from school. Someone I had ignored when they needed help. Someone whose name I couldn't even remember now. My stomach churned. This isn't happening, I whispered. But deep down, I knew it was. Because every face that flickered across that thing carried a piece of guilt. A piece of something left unfinished. They belong somewhere, the voice continued. And now, they belong to you. No, I said firmly, forcing myself to stand despite my shaking legs. No, I'm not part of this. The doll tilted its head again. You already are. The room suddenly felt smaller. The walls seemed closer. The air thicker. And then I felt it. Something brushing against my ankle. I looked down. A small hand. Gripping me. I screamed and kicked it away, stumbling backward. But there were more now. Hands. Reaching. From the floor. From the shadows. From the edges of the room. They remember you, Aina said softly. Make it stop. I shouted. They don't want to stop. The blue-dressed doll took another step closer. You gave them silence, it said. Now they give you truth. My back hit the wall. There was nowhere left to go. What happens if I tell you everything? I asked desperately. If I confess all of it? The room went quiet again. The hands paused. The figures near the dollhouse stilled. The doll looked up at me. And for the first time, it hesitated. Everything? It asked. My chest rose and fell rapidly. Yes, I said. Everything. A long pause followed. Then you will be empty, it said. A chill ran through me. What does that mean? It stepped closer. So close I could see every tiny crack in its face. It means, it whispered, there will be nothing left of you to hide. My heart pounded in my ears. And then, I asked. Its smile widened. Then you will fit perfectly inside. My blood ran cold. Inside. The dollhouse. I shook my head violently. No, that's not happening. It already is, the voice replied. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. But something else. They looked smaller. My breath caught. No. I looked at the floor. It seemed farther away. The room, it was changing. Or I was. You're becoming part of it, Aina said gently. Stop it. I shouted. Stop it. But the doll only watched. And the shadows kept moving. And the dollhouse door was still open, waiting. The floor felt farther away with every second. At first, I thought it was just panic messing with my perception. But then the edges of everything began to stretch unnaturally. The bed looked taller, the ceiling impossibly high, the dollhouse, bigger. Or maybe I was getting smaller. No, this isn't happening, I whispered, staring at my hands. They were shrinking. Not dramatically, not in some sudden transformation, but subtly, steadily. My fingers looked thinner, shorter. My sleeves slipped past my wrists. You're becoming quiet, the voice said. I looked up at the blue-dressed doll. What does that even mean? I shouted. It means you are losing weight, it replied calmly. I'm not your body, it interrupted. A pause. Your presence. Something inside my chest twisted. What happens when I disappear? I asked, my voice cracking. The doll didn't answer immediately. Behind it, more of those figures pulled themselves from the dollhouse, half-formed, shifting, their faces flickering between identities like broken reflections. You don't disappear, it finally said. You settle. The word made my stomach drop. Settle? Where? The doll slowly turned its head toward the dollhouse. I followed its gaze. The tiny rooms didn't look so tiny anymore. They looked proportional, like a real house. Just waiting. No, I said firmly, shaking my head. I'm not going in there. You already live there, the voice whispered. I don't. You live in what you hide. My breathing grew uneven. That doesn't make sense. It does, it replied. You built walls. You locked doors. You buried things. The shadows inside the dollhouse shifted again. They just found a place to grow. A hand grabbed my ankle again, stronger this time. I screamed and kicked, but more hands followed, crawling up my legs, clutching at my clothes. They remember being ignored, Aina said softly from the bed. It hurts them. I didn't do anything to them. I yelled. You did nothing, the doll corrected. And somehow, that felt worse. The figures began pulling themselves closer, surrounding me in a loose, uneven circle. Their forms twisted. some tall, some small, some barely human. And every time one of their faces flickered, I felt something. A memory. A moment I had pushed away. A lie. A silence. You left people behind, the voices whispered. You stayed quiet. You chose yourself. I was a kid. I shouted again, tears spilling down my face. I didn't know better. But you do now, the doll said. And you still hide. The words hit harder than anything else. Because they were true. Not just the boy at the lake. There were others. Smaller things. Crueler things. Moments where I chose not to speak. Not to help. Not to admit. Things I told myself didn't matter. Things I buried. And somehow, they all led here. The hands tightened their grip. You don't get to take me. I screamed, thrashing. I'm not part of this. The doll stepped even closer. So what are you? It asked. I froze. The question hung in the air. What are you? It repeated, without your secrets. I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. Because I didn't know. And that silence answered everything. The figure suddenly surged forward. I was dragged to the floor, my body hitting hard as dozens of hands pulled at me. No, stop, I screamed, clawing at the ground. But the floor felt different now. Smooth, polished, wooden. I looked down. It wasn't the bedroom floor anymore. It was the dollhouse. No, I whispered. I was already inside. Not fully. Not yet. But the world around me was shifting, shrinking, compressing. The bed loomed like a towering structure in the distance. Ana's room stretched into something unrecognizable. And the dollhouse, it was no longer in the room. It was the room. You're crossing, the voice said softly. I felt myself being pulled toward the open doorway. The tiny front entrance. The front door. Facing outward. Watching. I stepped back. I told the truth, I said quietly. No response. But somehow, I felt like it heard me. I left the room and closed the door behind me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was hiding anything. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I still hear it. Not loud, not threatening, just a faint whisper, waiting, listening. Because the truth is, the dollhouse never really disappears. It just waits for the next secret. For a long time, I thought it was over. That what happened that night had ended something, that whatever lived inside the dollhouse had been satisfied, or weakened, or at least pushed back into whatever dark place it came from. And for a while, it felt true. Days passed. Then weeks. The house felt normal again. Ana played with other toys. The dollhouse stayed in the corner of her room, untouched. My mother even joked about giving it away, saying it looked too creepy compared to everything else. I didn't argue. I didn't go near it either. But something had changed in me. Not just fear. Awareness. Every thought I had, every small lie I almost told, I caught myself. It was like something inside me had been forced open, and now I couldn't close it again. I told the truth more. Even when it was uncomfortable. Even when it made things worse. Because deep down, I knew. Silence had a cost. And I had already seen what it could become. But the peace didn't last. It never does. It started with small things. The kind you can ignore. The kind you convince yourself are nothing. One night, I passed by Ana's room and noticed the dollhouse door was open. Just slightly. A thin black line in the middle of the tiny frame. I froze. I hadn't touched it. Ana hadn't touched it. At least, I didn't think she had. Slowly, I stepped closer. My heart began to pound again, that same old rhythm of dread returning like it had never really left. I knelt down in front of it. The door creaked softly as I pushed it open the rest of the way. Inside, everything looked normal. Perfectly arranged. Still. Too still. I exhaled slowly. Just a toy, I whispered. But as I began to stand, I heard it. A faint sound. Not a whisper. Not a voice. Something else. A soft tapping. From inside the walls of the dollhouse. Tap. 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 My blood ran cold. I leaned closer. The tapping stopped. Silence again. I stayed there for a few seconds, barely breathing. Then, tap. This time louder. From upstairs. Inside the tiny bedroom. I pulled my hand back as if burned. No, I said under my breath. No, I told everything. It's done. But even as I said it, I felt it. That same presence. Not as strong. Not as overwhelming. But still there. Watching. Waiting. Testing. I slowly closed the dollhouse door and stood up. And that's when I noticed something else. The blue-dressed doll wasn't inside. My chest tightened instantly. I looked around the room. Nothing. Just the bed. The desk. The window. Then, looking for her. I froze. Aina was standing in the doorway. I hadn't heard her walk in. When did you? I started. She said you would check, Aina said calmly. My throat went dry. Aina, I said slowly, have you been playing with the dollhouse again? She shook her head. No. Then where is the doll? I asked. Aina smiled faintly. She's not a doll, she said. That same cold feeling crept back into my chest. Then what is she? Aina stepped closer. Something that listens, she whispered. I grabbed her shoulders gently. Listen to me, I said firmly. If she talks to you, you have to ignore her. Don't answer. Don't tell her anything. Do you understand? Aina tilted her head. But she already knows things, she said. My grip tightened slightly. That doesn't matter. You don't give her more. Aina looked at me for a long moment. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. She said you forgot one. My hands went cold. What? I whispered. A secret, Aina said. My heart began to race again. No, I said quickly. I told everything. Aina shook her head slowly. No, she said. You told what you remember. A sharp silence filled the room. What does that mean? I asked. Aina's smile faded. She says some things aren't gone, she whispered. Just buried deeper. A ringing filled my ears. That's not true, I said. I would know. Aina didn't respond. Instead, she stepped aside and pointed behind me. I turned slowly and saw it. The blue-dressed doll, sitting on my bed. My entire body went rigid. It hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. I took a slow step toward it. You're not real, I said again, though the words felt weaker now. It didn't move, but the voice came, clear, closer than ever. Not real things don't follow you. I stopped. My chest tightened. What do you want? I asked. Balance, it replied. I told you everything. No, it said softly. You told enough to stop the others. A cold wave of realization washed over me. The others, I repeated. The ones that feed on silence, it said. They left. And you? I asked. A pause. I am older. My breath caught. Older. Different. Worse. What does that mean? I whispered. It didn't answer directly. Instead, it said, you forgot something important. I didn't. I snapped. There's nothing else. Silence. Then, think. The word echoed unnaturally. And suddenly, something shifted in my mind. A memory. Faint. Distant. Blurry. But there. Not the lake. Not the money. Something else. Something I had never fully looked at. Because I didn't want to. My breathing slowed. No, I whispered. The doll didn't move, but I could feel it watching. Say it, it said. My chest felt tight. I didn't do anything, I said weakly. Say it. I didn't. Say it. My voice broke. I knew, I whispered. The room felt colder instantly. Knew what? The voice pressed. Tears filled my eyes. I knew something bad was going to happen, I said. The memory sharpened. I was older. Not a child this time. There had been warning signs. Someone struggling. Someone asking for help. And I saw it. I understood it. But I ignored it. Because it wasn't my problem. Because it was easier not to get involved. And something terrible happened after that. Something I told myself I had nothing to do with. But deep down, I knew. You chose silence again, the voice said. I didn't think. I started. You did. I just didn't want to get involved, it finished. I collapsed onto the edge of the bed. I didn't hurt anyone, I said. The doll's voice softened slightly. No, it agreed. But you let harm exist. My hands trembled. That's not the same thing, I whispered. It is here. The words sank deep. Because I understood now. This thing, it wasn't just about what you did. It was about what you allowed. And that was much harder to escape. What happens now? I asked quietly. A long pause followed. Then, you decide. I looked up sharply. What? Truth or silence? It said. I already chose truth. For what you remember, it replied. And now, my throat tightened. You remember more. The room felt still again. Not hostile. Not chaotic. Just waiting. I looked at Aina. She was watching quietly. Not scared. Not confused. Just observing. Like she understood more than she should. Then I looked back at the doll. What happens if I stay honest? I asked. The answer came softly. We fade. And if I don't? A longer silence this time. Then, we grow. I closed my eyes, took a slow breath, and understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't something I could end in one night. This wasn't a curse you break. It was something that stayed. Something that lived in choices. In silence. In truth. I opened my eyes. I won't ignore things anymore, I said. The doll didn't respond. I won't pretend I don't see, I continued. Still nothing. I won't stay quiet when I know something's wrong. The air shifted slightly. Not colder. Not warmer. Just lighter. The doll's head tilted. And for the first time, it stepped back. A small movement. But enough. She hears you, Aina said softly. I nodded. I know. The doll turned slowly. Walked toward the edge of the bed. And then, fell. But when I looked down, it was gone. I exhaled shakily. Is it over? I asked. Aina shrugged. She's still listening, she said. I looked at the dollhouse. Its door was closed. Still. Silent. But I didn't trust that silence anymore. Because now I understood something else. The dollhouse doesn't trap people. It reflects them. And as long as there are secrets, as long as there is silence, it will always have a door open somewhere. Even if you can't see it. And sometimes, late at night, I still feel it. Not watching. Not hunting. Just waiting. For the moment someone decides to stay quiet again.